My brother hired robbers to kill me. I texted him "job done" from the Hitman's phone. To our amazing viewers at Betrayal Chronicles, we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Mask of Ordinary. Nathan MacDonald adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses and loosened his conservative tie as he walked through the front door of his suburban Toronto home. To the neighbours, to his colleagues at Morrison Associates CPA firm, even to his younger brother of 15 years, he was exactly what he appeared to be. A methodical, slightly boring accountant who preferred spreadsheets to people and numbers to noise. They had no idea that behind those mild brown eyes lay the calculating mind of a man who had once breached terrorist strongholds in the mountains of Afghanistan, who had eliminated targets with surgical precision across 3 continents, and who had walked away from the Canadian Special Operations Regiment, not because he couldn't handle the violence, but because he had grown too good at it. "Hey, I'm home," Nathan called out, setting his briefcase down with the same deliberate care he applied to everything in his civilian life. The house was silent, except for the distant hum of the dishwasher. Tyler's BMW wasn't in the driveway. Nathan had inherited this house from their parents 5 years ago, a decision that had created a rift between the brothers that never quite healed. Their father's will had been clear. Nathan, as the older and more responsible son, would inherit the family home and the bulk of the estate. Tyler, who had struggled with gambling debts and poor financial decisions, would receive a smaller inheritance meant to help him get back on his feet. What Nathan hadn't expected was how deeply that decision would poison his relationship with Tyler MacDonald. Tyler had been 28 then, charming and impulsive, with the kind of smile that could talk his way out of trouble. What had attracted Nathan to maintaining their relationship wasn't just family loyalty, but his belief that Tyler could change, that he could find stability. After years of living in shadows and taking lives, Nathan had craved that normal family connection, like a drowning man craves air. The irony wasn't lost on him now. Nathan moved through his meticulously maintained home, noting details that had been invisible to him just months ago, but now felt significant. The spare key Tyler had borrowed and never returned. The way Tyler had started asking detailed questions about Nathan's work schedule, his security system, his insurance policies. The sudden interest in Nathan's military background, questions that had seemed like family bonding but now felt like reconnaissance. He had been patient, methodical in his observations. Old habits from his military days had served him well in this new kind of surveillance. Nathan had learned that Tyler's recent consulting work coincided perfectly with the schedule of Derek Blackwood, a former Canadian Forces operator turned private security consultant who worked out of a downtown Toronto office. Derek Blackwood. Nathan had done his research, pulling strings he hadn't touched in years to access classified records. The man had served in Afghanistan, been discharged for excessive force, and had since built a reputation as someone who solved problems for wealthy clients, problems that often required violence. What Derek didn't know was that Nathan had been tracking his activities for weeks, learning his patterns, his weaknesses, his methods. The doorbell rang, pulling Nathan from his thoughts. Through the peephole, he saw a delivery man holding a large package. "Nathan MacDonald?" the man asked when Nathan opened the door. "That's me. Package for you. Needs a signature." Nathan signed the tablet and accepted the heavy box. There was no return address, but he recognized the subtle marking in the corner. A contact from his past had come through. Inside, wrapped in military-grade foam, were items that officially didn't exist. Untraceable communication devices, surveillance equipment, and a few other tools that would help even the playing field. As Nathan unpacked the contents in his home office, his phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Working late again tonight? Probably won't make it for dinner. Sorry, bro." The same message, almost word for word, that he had sent 15 times in the past month. Nathan almost smiled. If Tyler had put half as much creativity into his legitimate work as he did into his deception, he might have been more successful. Nathan sat back in his chair and pulled out a notebook. Not a digital device that could be hacked or traced, but old-fashioned paper. On the first page, he had been compiling a detailed timeline of Tyler and Derek's meetings. On the second page, he had been documenting their daily routines, their meeting places, their security measures. On the third page, he had begun planning their punishment. Nathan had learned during his special operations years that revenge was like any other military operation. It required intelligence, planning, and perfect execution. It also required an understanding of your enemies, their motivations, and their weaknesses. Tyler wanted money, and what he saw as justice, the inheritance he felt he deserved. Derek wanted control and power. Both of them saw Nathan as weak, disposable, an obstacle between Tyler and what he believed was rightfully his. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Chapter 2: Shadows and Revelations. 3 weeks later, Nathan had assembled a complete picture of the conspiracy against him. It was worse than simple family betrayal. It was calculated, mercenary, and involved more players than he had initially suspected. The breakthrough had come through surveillance equipment he had installed in Tyler's apartment. For someone supposedly working consulting jobs, Tyler spent an unusual amount of time at Derek Blackwood's private security office, and even more time at locations that had nothing to do with legitimate business. Nathan sat in his study, reviewing the audio recordings from the past week. Tyler's voice came through the small speaker, clearer than he wished it was. "I'm tired of watching Nathan live in the house that should have been split between us," Tyler was saying. 15 years I've had to watch him play the responsible older brother while I struggled with debt. Dad always favored him. And even from the grave, Nathan gets everything. Derek's voice responded, and Nathan could hear the smugness even through the distorted audio. "Won't be much longer now. My contact says the life insurance policy you took out on him last year is ironclad. Accidental death during a home invasion pays double, $3 million. And you're sure this will look like a random break-in? I've arranged this kind of thing before. 4 guys, masks, they come in looking for valuables. Things go wrong. Your brother tries to play hero. He gets shot. You're conveniently out of town in Vancouver visiting friends. Clean and simple." Nathan paused the recording and leaned back in his chair. A life insurance policy he had never signed, taken out in his name. A home invasion designed to look random but carefully orchestrated. And apparently this wasn't Derek's first time arranging such accidents. He pulled out his secure phone and sent a message to an old contact in military intelligence. "Need background on Derek Blackwood, Toronto. Full workup, previous assignments, client list, payment history, highest priority." The response came back within hours, and it painted a picture that explained everything. Derek Blackwood wasn't just providing security. He was running a sophisticated operation that eliminated inconvenient family members, business partners, and witnesses for clients who could afford his services. 5 deaths in the past 3 years, all ruled accidental or random crimes, all resulting in significant insurance payouts or inheritance transfers. Tyler hadn't stumbled into Derek Blackwood's services. He had sought him out specifically, targeting Nathan not out of sudden desperation, but as a calculated business opportunity. Nathan reviewed the files detailing Derek's previous operations. The man was professional, but he had patterns. He always used the same crew of 4 contractors, ex-military men who had been dishonorably discharged and needed money. He always arranged for his clients to have alibis, and he always demanded half his payment up front, with the remainder delivered immediately after the accident. According to the timeline Nathan had constructed from their recorded conversations, the home invasion was scheduled for the following Friday night. Tyler would be visiting college friends in Vancouver. an alibi backed up by hotel reservations and social media posts. The four-man crew would enter through the back door at approximately 2 a.m., when Nathan would theoretically be asleep and defenseless. Nathan spent the next evening in his garage, working with tools that no suburban accountant should have owned. He reinforced door frames, installed motion sensors that wouldn't be visible during casual surveillance, and positioned cameras that would capture everything. In his home office, he assembled a communications array that would record not just what happened in his house, but every radio transmission from the attackers. The most important preparation, however, was mental. Nathan hadn't killed anyone in 6 years, hadn't even touched a weapon in 3. But as he reviewed the recordings of his brother and Derek planning his murder, he felt the old training reassert itself. The careful emotion management, the tactical thinking, the cold calculation that had once made him one of Canada's most effective operators. By Thursday evening, everything was ready. Nathan sat in his study, reviewing the files on Derek's crew. 4 men: Marcus Reed, a former Army demolitions expert; Lucas Campbell, ex-Marine with sniper training; James Mitchell, Navy dropout; and Andrew Chen, former Air Force security specialist. All of them had been discharged for various offences ranging from insubordination to assault. All of them had been arrested multiple times since leaving the military. All of them had worked for Derek Blackwood before. They were professionals, but they were also predictable. They expected to encounter a frightened accountant, not a special operations operative who had been planning their defeat for weeks. Nathan's phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Leaving for Vancouver in the morning. Gonna be weird being away while you're alone in that big house. Take care, bro." He almost laughed at the irony. If everything went according to plan, Tyler would indeed be thinking about him this weekend. But the circumstances would be very different from what Tyler was expecting. Chapter 3. The Setup. Friday arrived with the crisp air of early autumn in Toronto. Nathan went through his normal routine: breakfast, shower, conservative suit, briefcase, and drove to the office as if nothing had changed. But throughout the day, he felt the familiar pre-mission focus settling over him, the heightened awareness that had once helped him survive in hostile territory. At Morrison Associates, Nathan maintained his boring accountant persona perfectly. He attended a budget review meeting, processed quarterly reports, and exchanged pleasantries with colleagues who would be shocked to learn that their mild-mannered co-worker was planning to kill 4 men in approximately 18 hours. "Working late again tonight?" asked Sarah Chen, the office manager, as she prepared to leave at 5 p.m. "Just finishing up the Henderson account," Nathan replied, adjusting his glasses. "You know how it is. Numbers don't balance themselves." Sarah laughed. "Tyler's lucky to have such a dedicated brother. Most siblings would have written each other off after inheritance disputes." "Tyler's family," Nathan said, which was true in ways Sarah couldn't imagine. At 6 p.m., Nathan drove home to his empty house. Tyler had left that morning with a suitcase and a performance worthy of an Oscar, hugging Nathan goodbye and reminding him to keep the doors locked while he was away. According to the GPS tracker Nathan had placed in Tyler's car, Tyler was indeed at the hotel in Vancouver, where he had told Nathan he would be staying. A perfect alibi. Nathan spent the evening making final preparations. He changed from his accountant's uniform into dark clothing that would give him tactical advantages. He tested his communication equipment one last time and confirmed that all cameras were recording. Most importantly, he reviewed the layout of his house, planning sight lines and movement patterns with the same precision he had once used to clear hostile buildings. At 11 p.m., Nathan's secure phone buzzed with a message from his military intelligence contact. "Blackwood's crew departed Toronto at 2200 hours. 4-man team in stolen van on schedule for your location." Nathan typed back, "Understood. going dark until operation complete. He turned off all the lights in the house, except for a single lamp in the bedroom, creating the impression that he was reading before sleep. Then he positioned himself in the living room with clear views of all entry points, wearing night vision equipment that would give him a significant advantage over intruders expecting to operate in darkness. At 1:47 a.m., motion sensors detected movement in his backyard. Nathan's heart rate slowed as his combat training took over. Through his night vision, he could see 4 figures approaching the house with military precision. They moved well, spread out, communicating through hand signals, each one covering a different angle. They had done this before, but they had never encountered Nathan MacDonald before. At 1:52 a.m., Nathan heard the subtle sound of lockpicks working on his back door. The men were skilled enough to defeat standard residential security, but they had no way of knowing that Nathan had modified the door's electronic lock to send him a silent alert the moment anyone attempted to bypass it. At 1:54 a.m., the door opened. Nathan watched through his night vision as 4 masked figures entered his home. They moved with confidence, spreading out to clear the first floor before heading upstairs to find their target. Marcus Reed took point. Lucas Campbell covered the rear. James Mitchell swept left toward the kitchen, and Andrew Chen moved toward the living room where Nathan waited in the shadows. They expected to find a sleeping accountant. They found an ex-special operations soldier who had been planning their defeat for weeks. The first engagement lasted 15 seconds. When the motion stopped, 4 bodies lay on Nathan's hardwood floor, and the only sound was the gentle humming of his refrigerator in the kitchen. Nathan stood over the scene, his breathing controlled, his pulse steady. It had been 6 years since he had killed anyone, but muscle memory was a powerful thing. The skills that had made him one of Canada's most effective special operations soldiers hadn't disappeared. They had just been dormant, waiting for the right moment to resurface. A phone buzzed from inside Marcus Reed's jacket. Nathan pulled it out and saw a text message from Client T. "Is the bookworm dead yet? I want to see a picture." Nathan almost smiled. Tyler's nickname for him had always been Bookworm, a reference to Nathan's studious nature and love of reading. Tyler thought he was being affectionate. He had no idea how perfectly it would serve Nathan's purposes now. Nathan typed back from the dead hitman's phone. "Job done. Waiting for the cash." The response came immediately. "On my way. 20 minutes." Nathan looked at his watch. 2:23 a.m. Tyler would be arriving at 2:43 a.m., expecting to find his brother's body and pay Derek Blackwood's crew for their successful work. Instead, he would find something very different. Nathan spent the next 15 minutes arranging the scene exactly as he wanted it, positioning bodies and evidence to tell the story he needed told. When Tyler walked through that door, he would step into a trap that had been months in the making. At 2:41 a.m., Nathan heard a car in his driveway. Chapter 4. The Reckoning. Nathan positioned himself behind the living room door as headlights swept across his front windows. Through the security camera feed on his phone, he watched Tyler MacDonald step out of a rental car, not the BMW he had driven to Vancouver, but a vehicle with no connection to his official alibi. Tyler carried a black duffel bag and moved with nervous excitement, like a man about to collect the biggest payday of his life. He used his spare key to enter through the front door, calling out softly, "Hello? It's me. Where are you guys?" Nathan let Tyler take 3 steps into the house before he spoke from the shadows. "Right here, Tyler." Tyler spun around, his face cycling through confusion, fear, and desperate calculation in the space of a heartbeat. The duffel bag slipped from his fingers, hitting the floor with the sound of bundled cash. "Nathan, I thought you were, what are you doing up?" I came back early because I was worried about you and because you came to pay for my murder, Nathan said, stepping into the light. He held Marcus Reed's phone in one hand and his own weapon in the other. The text about the bookworm being dead. Remember? Tyler's face went pale as understanding hit him. His eyes darted to the 4 bodies on the floor, then back to Nathan's calm expression. Those men, are they? Very dead, just like you planned for me to be. Nathan, listen to me. This isn't what it looks like. I can explain everything. I'm sure you can, but I've heard your explanations already. Nathan pulled out his phone and played a recording of Tyler's voice. I'm tired of watching Nathan live in the house that should have been split between us. Tyler took a step backward, but Nathan had positioned himself between Tyler and the only exit. That was taken out of context. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. The pressure of being the younger brother who didn't inherit everything he wanted. Nathan's voice remained conversational, almost gentle. Or the pressure of waiting 5 years for the right moment to cash in on a $3 million life insurance policy. How did you... Tyler stopped himself, realizing that denying knowledge of the policy would be pointless. How did I know about the policy I never signed? The one you took out using forged documents? Nathan gestured toward the bodies. I'm a forensic accountant, Tyler. I notice financial irregularities. I also notice when my brother starts meeting with professional killers. Tyler's composure cracked completely. You don't understand what Derek offered me. A chance to finally get what Dad should have left me. Freedom from watching you live in luxury while I struggled with debt. You never wanted to help me. Never wanted to share anything. So you decided I should die instead. It wasn't supposed to be personal. Derek said it would be quick, that you wouldn't suffer. Nathan studied his brother's face, looking for any trace of remorse or genuine emotion. He found only self-pity and frustrated greed. Where is Derek now? 2 don't know. He was supposed to be here to collect his payment. Derek won't be collecting anything tonight. Nathan's phone buzzed with a text message from his military intelligence contact. Package delivered. Blackwood eliminated at his office at 0245 hours. Suicide note confessing to multiple murder-for-hire schemes found at scene. Derek is dead, Nathan announced casually. Professional suicide. Very thorough confession. The RCMP will be very interested in his client list. Tyler's legs gave out, and he collapsed into a chair. You killed him too? I had help. Old friends who believe in justice. Nathan sat down across from Tyler, still holding the weapon, but letting it rest on his knee. Now we need to discuss your future. You're going to turn me into the police eventually. But first, we're going to have a conversation about consequences. For the first time since entering the house, Tyler seemed to grasp the full scope of his situation. Nathan, please. I know I made a mistake, but we can work this out. We're brothers. We can go to family counseling. Start over. I'll do anything. Anything except face the consequences of your choices. Nathan's voice hardened. You forged my signature on a life insurance policy. You conspired to have me murdered. You've been stealing from our parents' estate to pay Derek's retainer fees. These aren't mistakes, Tyler. They're felonies. What do you want from me? I want you to understand who your brother really is. Nathan stood up and walked to his briefcase, pulling out a thin file folder. My name is Nathan MacDonald, but for 8 years before I became an accountant, I served with the Canadian Special Operations Regiment. He handed Tyler a photograph from the file. Nathan in military gear, standing with his unit in front of a helicopter in Afghanistan. I've killed more people than Derek Blackwood ever dreamed of killing. The difference is that I did it for my country, not for money. Tyler stared at the photograph, seeing his brother's face, but unable to reconcile it with the man he thought he knew. You were never just an accountant. I became an accountant. I learned the profession, built the credentials, created a life that was completely normal and completely real because after 8 years of war, I wanted peace. Nathan took the photograph back. You destroyed that peace. I didn't know. You didn't want to know. You wanted to see me as weak, boring, someone who didn't deserve what he had. It made your betrayal easier to justify. Nathan pulled out his phone and showed Tyler the screen. I've been recording everything that happened here tonight. Your confession, your admission of conspiracy, your knowledge of the murder plot. But I'm going to give you a choice. Tyler looked up at him with desperate hope. What kind of choice? You can call the police yourself and confess to conspiracy to commit murder. Take responsibility for what you've done. Serve your time, and maybe rebuild some small piece of dignity. Or you can try to run, and I'll hunt you down using skills you can't imagine. And if I confess? You'll go to prison for a very long time, but you'll be alive to serve that sentence. Tyler stared at the duffel bag full of cash, the money he had brought to pay for his brother's death. How long have you known? Longer than you think. I've been documenting everything, building a case, waiting for you to make your move. Tonight was never about me being surprised by home invaders. It was about you walking into a trap. You used yourself as bait. I used your greed as bait. You could have asked me for help with your debts at any time. You could have talked to me about feeling shortchanged by Dad's will. Instead, you chose murder. Nathan's phone rang. He answered it without taking his eyes off Tyler. Mr. MacDonald, this is Detective Jennifer Liu with Toronto Police. We've had reports of gunshots in your neighborhood. Are you safe? I'm safe, Detective. But I need to report a home invasion and an attempted murder conspiracy. My brother and I will need to come in and give statements. We'll send units to your location immediately. Nathan hung up the phone and looked at Tyler. Your choice. Tell them the truth when they arrive, or try to lie your way out of this and face the consequences. Tyler looked around the room at the bodies of the men he had hired to kill his brother, at the money he had brought to pay them, at the brother he had never really known. What happens if I tell the truth? You serve 25 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit murder, but you live to serve them. And if I don't? Nathan's expression didn't change, but something cold and final flickered in his eyes. Then you'll discover that my retirement from active duty was only a career change, not a personality change. In the distance, sirens wailed, growing closer. Tyler MacDonald looked at his older brother, the man he had tried to have killed, the man he had never really understood, and made his choice. I'll tell them the truth, Tyler said quietly. I'll confess to everything. Nathan nodded. Good choice, Tyler. You'll live to see tomorrow. As the police sirens grew louder, Nathan MacDonald sat in his living room, surrounded by the bodies of 4 professional killers, and facing his brother across a gulf that could never be bridged again. But for the first time in months, Nathan felt something like peace. Justice, he had learned, sometimes required a personal touch, and family, he had discovered, was defined not by blood, but by the choices people made when tested. Tyler had made his choice. Now he would live with the consequences. The mathematics of betrayal, Nathan reflected, as red and blue lights flashed through his windows, always balanced in the end. 6 months later, in a small coffee shop in Victoria, British Columbia, Nathan MacDonald read a newspaper article about his brother's sentencing. Tyler MacDonald had received 22 years in federal prison for conspiracy to commit murder, with the possibility of parole in 15 years. The article mentioned that Tyler had been cooperative with authorities, providing information that had led to the dismantling of Derek Blackwood's entire network. 3 other clients had been arrested and convicted. Their intended victims had all survived and were rebuilding their lives. Nathan folded the newspaper and looked out at the harbour, where ferries carried tourists and locals between the islands. He had a quiet life now, a small apartment, a part-time job at an accounting firm, and no connections to the violence of his past. Sometimes he missed his brother, or at least the brother he had thought Tyler could be. But Nathan had learned that family loyalty had limits, and those limits were defined by choices. Tyler had chosen murder over honesty, greed over relationship, betrayal over brotherhood. Nathan had chosen justice over mercy, survival over sentiment. In 15 years, Tyler would be eligible for parole. By then, Nathan would be living under a different name in a different place, having disappeared as completely as his military training had taught him. The mathematics of family, Nathan had learned, required that some bonds be severed completely, leaving only the consequences of choices behind. Outside the coffee shop window, Victoria's harbour sparkled in the afternoon sun, and Nathan MacDonald turned to a fresh page in his life, leaving the past where it belonged, buried and forgotten. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel.